Hey guys, welcome to our weekly Friday video. Now sometimes we have a bonus video on Tuesday, but today we're checking out two Xeon processors for socket 1155. On the left side we have the Xeon E3-1220 and on the right side is the 1220V2. The Xeon processors are for workstations and servers, but they work in most standard 1155 motherboards. So unlike socket 775, there's no need to modify the socket or the processors, and you also don't have to inject any microcode into the BIOS. Let's quickly compare these Xeons with the i5s. The 1220 matches up with the i5-2400 and the 1220V2 matches up with the i5-3450. But there are small differences. The Xeons are a little bit faster. They have 8 MB of level 3 cache compared to only 6 on the i5s. Also, the Xeons do not have integrated HD Intel graphics, so you need to use a dedicated video card, but the TDP on the Xeons is therefore slightly lower. So we have 4 cores running at 3.1 GHz, but thanks to Turbo Boost it will actually run a bit faster, somewhere between 3.2 and 3.4 GHz, depending on the workload. The 1220 is a Sandy Bridge processor built on 32nm process and has a TDP of 80 watts. So here we also have 4 cores running also at 3.1 GHz, but the Turbo Boost is a little bit more aggressive with clock speeds running at up to 3.5 GHz. The 1220V2 is from the Ivy Bridge generation. It's built on the smaller 22nm process and therefore consumes less power with a TDP of only 69 watts. There's also a difference with the memory controller. The 1220 supports DDR3 1333, whereas the 1220V2 also has support for the faster 1600 MHz DDR3 memory. This is the motherboard we're using. It's a micro ADX motherboard from Asus. We've got 3 PCI Express slots. There's a PCI slot here. We have 2 SATA 3 and 4 SATA 2 connectors. This motherboard supports USB 3. We have a USB 3 header here. And this one has 2 RAM slots, so not 4, but that worked great with support for 16 GB of RAM. At the back we have PS2, 4 USB 2, 2 USB 3. There's HDMI, VGA and DVI. We have gigabit LAN and also audio ports. As always, the motherboard got a little bit of PCL TLC. I cleaned it a little bit with a brush and also flashed the latest and greatest BIOS. And just to confirm, I didn't have to modify the BIOS at all. The latest BIOS was fully compatible with both of these Xeon processors. Let's go over the components I'm using in this video. Here we have the motherboard, our 2 processors. I've got a 16 GB RAM kit from Corsair. With the 1220, we're running at 1333 with 99924 timings. With the 1220V2, we're running at 1600 MHz, also with 99924 timings, thanks to an XMP profile. I'm using an Intel stock cooler with a copper core that worked just fine. We've got a 600 watt power supply, a Radeon RX 570, we got a Sound Blaster and 2 SSDs for Windows and all the games. So here we have the results for Cinebench. Firstly, we can see that these 2 processors are heaps faster compared to socket 775. We can also see that the Ivy Bridge V2 is a little bit faster than the 1220, not much. So here the higher IPC and the higher Turbo Boost results in a slightly better performance. But we can also see that in Cinebench R15, which is a multi-threaded benchmark, that the older generation i7-870 is able to beat both processors. In 3D Mark, we can see mixed results. In CloudGate, the i7-870 is once again faster. Very likely this benchmark has a component that weights the multi-threaded performance of the processor quite heavily. We can once again see the socket 775 machine behind, but not that much because this is a graphics benchmark, so the video card is more important. And we can see once again the difference between Ivy Bridge and Sandy Bridge. But it gets really interesting when we have a look at power consumption. So first, looking at idle, we can see that the Linfield system consumes a lot of power, even at idle, whereas the other processors consume very little, even less than socket 775. But the real difference can be seen when we measure the power consumption under load. So the Linfield machine 178 watts, so this is while running Cinebench, Socket 775 114 watts, and Sandy Bridge and Ivy Bridge, they just consume so much less power, especially the Ivy Bridge processor with a load of only 73 watts. That is really impressive. So we can see some really interesting things. These two quad processors have a much higher IPC compared to Linfield and get close to matching the i7-870 in Cinebench. But what's really impressive is that they can do this by consuming around half the power, especially the 1220V2 Ivy Bridge Xeon is impressive in regards to performance per watt. With a Cinebench score of 472, it is close to the 500 that the i7-870 delivers, but that i7 has hyperthreading, so this really shows how much stronger the IPC of these Xeon processors really is. Comparing this to a modern CPU, I believe they compare quite well to a Ryzen 3-1200. And now we're going to have a look at some games. I forced 16x anisotropic filtering in the driver, and I will put the game title and the settings down below in the video.
Hey-ya! So, a griffin this close to the village? Strange.
My thoughts exactly. In the forest.
Nice work. You're now in 5th place.
Fight like a man!
It was laid to rest.
Hang on, Anya. I'm on my way.
Slicer! Give him the combo. Zap him, then whack him. 1-2 punch. Remember, the 1-2
I'm not a bad person!
And left 5, 43 dip, right 6 over crest, 200, over bumps, 80, right 4 long, and right 6, 250, over finish, to stop.
Jesus! They're everywhere! Fucking hell.
So that was pretty decent gaming performance if you ask me. These processors have really good IPC, and in some games we saw triple-digit FPS. Even newer games run fairly well on this computer. It also supports the latest CPU instructions, so any software out there should still run on these two processors. The value is definitely there, and unlike Linfield, motherboards for socket 1155 are not hard to find at all. They should sell for around $40 if you look around. DDR3 memory is also cheap, so you can get a 16GB RAM kit for around $80. Deciding between the two processors, what I like about the 1220V2 is, firstly, it performs a little bit better, but it does so by consuming less power, and that's an aspect I really like. And if it's between $40 and $50, in my opinion, I'd be happy to spend that little bit extra to get that better performance per watt. I also liked how these processors are now able to better show what the Radeon RX 570 can do. At 1080p, in my opinion, this is the best value video card you can get right now. But compared to some of these slower processors, yeah, we can definitely see that it has been held back by the CPU performance. And if you go with a Sandy Bridge or Ivy Bridge CPU, we could see the improvements across the board, even in older games, but also in the latest and greatest games. So guys, really interested to hearing your thoughts. Sandy Bridge, Ivy Bridge, which would you pick? And also, have you considered the Xeon processor? Now, a lot will depend on pricing. As always, I will put some links down below in the description. Sometimes the i5 can be had for less, but the Xeon, it's just another alternative. Maybe there's a shortage or you can't find the i5. Have a look for the Xeon processors instead. And that's pretty much it for this video. So we saw some really decent performance, excellent value, and yeah, looking forward to doing some more tests with upcoming processors. As always, let me know what you guys want to see. I always pay attention. I read every single comment and I make a list of video suggestions for the future. I will see you next week for our weekly Friday video, but do keep an eye out for Tuesday. Sometimes there will be a bonus video. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Give it a like and click on the notification bell. And I shall see you soon with another one.